Hey mamas, so this is Mama Confession Monday, episode 7, and I thought today I would take a break from sort of the hard and heavy stuff and talk about our memories that have been kind of profound in my life. A couple years before Emery was born, Terry got really sick, and it came out of nowhere. He hurt his back. Actually, he cracked some ribs. He didn't know that he cracked some ribs, but he was playing soccer, and someone from another team checked him kind of rough, and he fell. And he got back up, and he was like, oh, that kind of hurt, but he kind of just, walked it off. And at the time, he was working, and he was doing some archaeology and things like that, and his back was really hurting him. And so his doctor was prescribing him Tylenol to take for the pain. And then it was getting closer to Christmas, and the weather was getting really cold, like it was freezing at night and stuff. And Terry, who was doing some archaeology, was just like, oh, it's getting worse, kind of. Or he was saying it was getting worse. And so his doctor just prescribed him T3s for the back pain. Little did any of us know, that my husband's liver wasn't dealing with the toxins from the Tylenol very well. He wasn't dumping out all the toxins, or it wasn't dumping out all the toxins at the end of the day, kind of thing. And then all of a sudden T3s were on top of that, and over the course of 3 months he was slowly overdosing. One day he started being short of breath, and I knew something was kind of up, and I said, okay. At the time he was like, no, I'll be okay. And I said, okay, we'll do this tonight, and if tomorrow you're still short of breath and you get worse, you're going to the hospital. I'm taking you to the hospital. And you have to know too, like, Terry's been in and out of hospital for most of his life, and us being together, it was nothing new for us to go to the hospital. So I guess you kind of get a bit complacent, or kind of when to freak out, and the shortness of breath was kind of freaking me out. So the next day rolls around, he's still short of breath, and I didn't sleep that night because I was literally paying attention to the way he was breathing. And I take him to the hospital. He was getting kind of weak in the legs. I bring him to triage, and we do what we usually do, which is I bring him to triage and I say, call me when you get a bed. And so I was waiting for his phone call, and I get the call, and he has a bed, but he's short of breath, and the reason why is because he's fighting the toxins in his body, and his liver's not doing so good at that time. It's just overloaded by the Tylenol. And so that was a whole thing. So we would go visit him, and I remember telling the nurse, it looks like he's having a really hard time breathing. Like, he can't even catch his breath. He's just having such a hard time. Is there a way you can help him? And I remember the nurse being a bit short with me, like, I think we know what we're doing. He's just breathing out the toxins, kind of thing. And I was like, oh, it just seems like he needs to be on an oxygen tank or something. He just can't catch his breath. And little do I know, when we go to visit him later that night, they have started to put him on a ventilator because he's just having such a hard time catching his breath. Oh, my baby's awake again. He's not sleeping very good. I'll be right back. Hi. Okay, a couple hours later. My boy didn't go back to sleep, and I could not stand all the garbage and the compost that needed to go out. So I asked my niece if she could watch baby. Her house is just behind my house. If she could watch baby for an hour or so while I ran around and did the garbage and the compost. And so, I mean, you may not be able to tell because it's black as well as the hoodie, but I put my hair up in a bun and I don't know if you have the similar experience with the compost and then washing it out, but it splatters me everywhere, and I just can't. I had to change out of my clothes. Anyways, back to my story about Terry. So they put him on a ventilator to help him breathe. And during times like that, you know, I become an emergency single mom. I've said that before. And things were getting a bit better. His breathing was getting better. And then all of a sudden I get a call, and a social worker said, "Has a doctor called you?" And I said, "No." And I was getting ready to go to work. And the social worker says, "Well, Mrs. Point, I'm sorry to say, but your husband had a heart attack." And I went, "What?" And I couldn't imagine someone in his 30s could have a heart attack. And so I had to go to, because I was on my way to work, I went to work in a daze. I went to my boss, and I told her that, you know, I had to go to the hospital. Terry had a heart attack, and I just have to go. And, you know, through all of that, and in and out of hospital, and, you know, sometimes we would get great, wonderful nurses, and sometimes we would get nurses that were just so mean, or they made assumptions, and it really hurt to have to deal with someone who made assumptions. Like, for example, before they put him in a ventilator, I was making jokes with Terry, and he wasn't allowed to have Advil because that's a blood thinner, and he has a rare blood condition, so he couldn't have that. And then the Tylenol messed with his liver, and his liver couldn't detox, and so he overdosed. And so I was joking. I said, "Okay, so if you have any more pain, you can't take Advil, you can't take Tylenol. It's just a straight shot to morphine." The nurse overheard this, and he said, "You know, maybe you should make sure to have a conversation with the pain relief specialist or pain management specialist, so that he's more responsible about his use of pain medication." And I looked at him and I said, "Have you read his chart?" And he goes, "Yes, he's here for an overdose." And I said, "No, he's here because he had cracked ribs," which we found out just when they did an x-ray. And for months, the doctor was just prescribing him Tylenol. And when it got really bad, like during the cold month of December, the doctor prescribed T3s. Little did we know his liver wasn't functioning properly, and over 3 months he overdosed. That wasn't his fault. He wasn't abusing drugs. And the nurse was taken aback, and he was like, I didn't mean," and I was like, "No, you meant what you said, and you said it because you assumed that this indigenous male was abusing drugs, and he has a substance abuse problem." And the nurse was like, "I'm so sorry," and I was like, "Please leave." And I think that nurse was mortified, and he made sure to switch out shifts, because I never saw him again during our stay, or during my husband's stay at the hospital. Anyways, so he was in and out of hospital. He finally got better, but he couldn't with any form of heart. Oh, and I should say, it wasn't a heart attack that happened. His body was so weak that a virus came and attacked one of the heart valves in his heart, and so it presented itself as a heart attack, but really it was a virus that weakened one of the valves of his heart. And so it wasn't pumping. I can't remember if it was allowing it to fill up properly or allowing it to pump fully, as that was the issue. But anyways, when anyone has a heart issue, it's always going to be 6 months of no work, no nothing. You're resting, you're learning how to walk up and down stairs, you're building up your your strength. And so I was a single mom in that sense, like an emergency single mom. I was a caretaker. I was the dog walker. I was the chef and the maid. I was doing all of it. And when Terry finally, you know, those 6 months has passed and he was able to bounce back as well as he did because of his age, he was able to bounce back with no real repercussions other than we got this pamphlet saying that even him doing all the right things, he could still have a spontaneous heart attack. Lo and behold, you know, 10 years later, he actually had a spontaneous heart attack. So once he was out of the woods and I was able to sort of let go of some of the duties that I had, I started to get really anxious and I was starting to have heart palpitations and I was starting to cry at the drop of a hat. Like, I couldn't figure out why. I would go into my office every day, close the blinds, and then burst into tears. I couldn't figure it out. Everything was getting better and I just couldn't wrap my head around why was I all of a sudden getting so emotional, crying at a drop of a hat, snapping at everybody, and not being able to regulate my emotions at all. And so I went to the doctor and she said, you know, I told her everything. And she said, you know, people think that PTSD is just for war veterans, but really it's consistent or abrupt trauma that triggers you to feel this from this onset of stress. And I'm saying, I said, does that mean I have post-traumatic stress disorder? And she said, no, I'm saying you're probably on the verge of having that. You've been through a roller coaster, even though your husband's been going through that trauma of being sick and then getting better. You were there doing everything to keep it going, to keep the house going, to make sure the bills were paid and all of that. And so she said, you know, I think something's got to give in your life for you to be able to take a step back and really allow yourself to heal now. You let your husband heal, now it's time for you to heal. And for me, the biggest thing that really caused a lot of stress and anxiety for me was working at the job I was at. And so I talked it over with my husband and I said, you know, things might be tough. Like, he was already slowly going back to work. And I said, you know, I'm making pretty good money. I don't know what else I could cut out to help me heal. And he said, no, you do what you have to do. I support you 100%. And I remember asking my son, who was like 3 or 4 years old. He was in bed with me. Terry was making breakfast. And I said to him, I said, baby, is mommy a good mama? And he said, you're a good mama, but you could do better. And I made sure to like look at him without saying anything, even though I wanted to cry because I was like, oh my God. He said, I want a mom who smiles. I want a mama who laughs. I want a mama who plays with me. I want a mama that doesn't yell at me all the time. And I held back tears so that I could ask, okay, baby, would you be happy if mama quit her job? And he said, in his 3-year-old wisdom, 3 or 4-year-old wisdom, he said, I'd be happy because you'd be happy. And I said, done. And I made that decision right then and there because I was wavering, like, oh, do I do this for, you know, do I stay for the money or do I go? And after breakfast, I made my resignation letter and I handed it in on Monday morning. So that happened on the Saturday, I handed it in on the Monday, and my boss said, don't do anything rash now. And I said, no, I put a lot of thought into this and this is the clearest I've ever felt about this matter, and I need to leave. And so for those first 3 months of not working, I still had that anxiety. I thought maybe it would just go away quickly. Nope, I was wrong. It stays with you for a while. It's like your body is still trying to figure it out. And I was doing the pickups and drop-offs for my son while Terry worked, and it was time to go pick up my son. It was raining really, really hard, and I was going through the back roads of Camosun Bog area. And it was raining so hard, and I was so anxious. I was shaking. My mind was going faster than I could comprehend. And I started to turn off the radio. I turned everything off, and I just needed it to be quiet. I just needed it to be quiet, and all I could hear was the rain. And I said at that time, I said, I just need a sign. I just need a sign that I'm doing the right thing and I'm not letting my family down and I'm not screwing everything up. I just need a sign. And at that moment, as I was driving, I saw something kind of out of the corner of my eye move like this. And I looked and I realized that it was an eagle coming, and I was driving this way, and at the speed we were going, we were going to hit. And so I started to slow down, and the eagle started to slow down, and it was just magic. Every time I tell the story, I just love it. He slowed down and I slowed down, and we went this way together, and we went parallel, and his head was right where my window was. And I don't know how I didn't crash the car, because all I did was stare at him, and I wasn't watching the road as I was driving. Don't do that. It just happened I was doing that. And I looked over at that eagle, and the eagle's eye was looking at me, and I could see, you know, the white of his feathers on his head, and I can see the brown of his eyes. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I just knew that everything was going to be okay. And I started to cry, because I just needed a sign to know that everything was going to be okay and I didn't screw everything up. And then that eagle did 2 flaps of its strong wings, and it went up onto a tree, and it did like a little button hook, and it landed on this branch so that it was still facing me as I was driving. And I thanked it, because I needed that. I needed it so bad, because I just thought I was letting everyone down. And I called Terry as soon as I passed that eagle, and I told him everything that happened, and he said, what a blessing. What a good way to heal your heart. And I thought, yeah, what a good way. I couldn't have asked for a better sign. And so that street, we've always called it now Eagle Alley. Like my family, we call it Eagle Alley, because that eagle saved me. That eagle kept me staying the path, you know. I could have tried to turn around and looked for another full-time job, but it wouldn't have healed me. It wouldn't have healed my family. I think this is all about stories, or about birds. Now that I'm looking at the ones that I've set aside. Anyways, another story I wanted to share. So Terry passed away August 13th. And I think it was it was either the night after or the day after that. There was a huge thunderstorm that happened in the night. And as soon as Terry passed away, my kids were sleeping in the bed with me. All 3 of them, plus me. I didn't really get much sleep. And my oldest one wasn't sleeping very much either. And this thunderstorm was loud. It was so loud, the lightning streaked across the window, the house shook. And my 2 boys didn't wake up. My infant, my 3-month-old at the time, and my 5-year-old, they slept soundly. And Tristan said, like, I'm surprised they didn't wake up. And I said, I don't know. And then my son finally fell asleep, but the thunderstorm was still going, and he slept through the thunder as well. And then the morning came, and more work for the funeral had to happen. And a lady came, and I've never met her before. And I wish I could remember her name, but at the time, you meet so many people and so many people are trying to talk to you that you kind of just forget about those types of things. You remember the intention, you remember the feelings, you remember the emotions, but you don't really remember who said what and names, dates, times, those things. They don't stick. So this lady came and she created this quilt, and she heard about Terry's passing and she just felt in her heart that she should make a quilt. And this quilt, I still have it, it's in the closet, keeping safe, is one of the main part of her design was Thunderbird. And I was just like, the lightning storm, it was believed that it was a thunderbird coming down and maybe hunting a whale, don't know. But that thunder, that was what I was thinking of, was a thunderbird. And then this lady came and she created this quilt for Terry, or in Terry's name, and there was thunderbirds on there. I couldn't believe it. Then with the eulogy, the person doing the eulogy, Jonna, she talked about Thunderbird because of that thunderstorm, that huge thunderstorm that happened. And she talked about Thunderbird. And I couldn't, it was like, wow. The day of the funeral, when we finally went up to the cemetery, I saw 4 eagles up in the sky. But actually, I've heard from other people who were watching that it was actually 5 altogether. And so what I saw was beautiful, but what people have told me was even more spectacular, and I wish I saw it, but I was facing a different way. But there was 4 eagles, and they were circling around each other, like in a circle, like this. And according to my cousin, the 5th eagle came and went under and over, and through and out of these 4 eagles. And he said he's never seen anything like that. And to me, it just seemed like Terry was coming home. You know, Terry was going to be with his loved ones on the other side, and he was okay. And he just wanted people to know he was okay. That he was safe and he was taken care of. And whoever those 4 other eagles were, they were welcoming him home. The last story I wanted to share before I have to probably run and go grab my baby is, I said it in the gardening video that there was 3 salvias that I got, and one of them got snapped off. And the reason why I was so sad about one of the salvias, someone came and snapped it from the base, was because I found this new nursery out in Richmond and I wanted to check it out. I had my baby with me, and I strap him in the carrier, and in the sling, and he's facing outwards. And as we get to the entrance, and all of it's outdoors, especially with COVID, they make sure everything's outdoors. Just as we get to the entrance, I see something fluttering to my left, and I look over, and there's a hummingbird, not even less than 3 feet away from us. And I said to Tegan, I said, that's a hummingbird. And hummingbirds are really special for our family because Terry, your daddy, used to say that hummingbirds reminded him of his grandma. And so hummingbirds are special to us. And so we walked through the nursery, and I was oohing and awing over everything because I'm obsessed. As we're walking through, I'm talking out loud to Terry, but it sounds like I'm talking to Tegan, in case anyone was like, why are you talking to yourself? It sounded like I was talking to Tegan, but really I was talking to Terry. And I said, Terry, what do you think if we should get like the fruit trees now, or should we wait till next summer? More of these types of plants, or expand the garden? What do you think? And so I was talking to him as I was walking through the garden, or as walking through the nursery. We get to the back and I see a hummingbird land on this, by this plant. I said, okay, Terry, wherever the hummingbird lands, or wherever any of these hummingbird lands, I'll pick up that plant and I will buy it and I'll take it home. So this hummingbird landed out by that plant and I went over and I picked it up. And as I'm picking that one up, the hummingbird went around to the other aisle and was landing on another plant. So I went around and I picked up that plant. And then it did it one more time and it landed by this other plant on a different aisle and grabbed that plant. And so I didn't really look at what they were called. And it wasn't until I was waiting and I put the plants on the table as I was waiting at the checkout. The first one that the bird landed on, each one of them were salvias, so I didn't know that they were all the same type of plant. So the first one was called Windwalker salvia. And I thought that was so fitting because I was walking around and I was talking, and it seemed like I was talking to the wind, but I was talking to Terry. Windwalker salvia. And then the other two plants were the same, and it was hot lip salvia. And I thought, that is so Terry, to be profound one minute and a smartass the next. So I remember laughing through my tears when I put it in the car and I just said, I hear you, husband, I hear you. Because that was Terry down to its core, like knowledgeable and cultural and profound. He could say so much in a few words, but he could also turn around and just be such a witty smartass. Quick as a whip. He had a reply, a retort, and it always would make you laugh a lot of times. And so, Windwalker salvia and hot lip salvia. And so I had them in pots and I didn't know where I wanted to put them. And I had them out on the yard and I was humming and hawing about where I should put it. And I started putting the tulips in the fall, and I kept looking at those pots and I thought, like, oh, should I do it now? Do I have time? Oh, should I put it right here at the driveway? I was thinking right by the driveway so that every time I drive in or out, I could look at those salvias and I could think of Terry and those hummingbirds and how that story came about. I will always remember it. Okay. Hi, sorry. So my camera died on me, so I had to restart it here with the new battery. I was planting the tulips and I wasn't sure where to put, or if I should put those 3 salvias in the ground. And I heard this fluttering behind me, this drrrr. I thought it was a motor, so I didn't think anything of it. And once I was pretty much done the tulips, I heard this drrrr right close to my ear. And I turned and looked at it, and it was a hummingbird so close to me that I kind of went, ugh, and I almost fell off my little stool there. And I was like, okay, I hear you, Terry. Get it in the ground. And so that's what I did. And I planted those 3 salvias right where my car door is, so I can always look at it and remember that beautiful story of these hummingbirds leading me to these plants. So it definitely broke my heart to see one day that one of the salvias was broken off. And of course it was the Windwalker was the one that was broken. Someone snapped it at the base. So fingers crossed that the salvias will grow back, that salvia will grow back. If not, I will have to go and find another Windwalker salvia. I hope I can, and I hope everything will be all right. I think I'll leave it here. I have to go grab my baby. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next week. Bye!